Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. Great to be here. Just wanted to catch everybody up and talk about session and answer any questions that you have. So really, since we haven't had any bills yet, really focused on the state of the state this week. I thought the governor did a great job, set a great tone for the state and what we're going to be doing this session, and really enjoyed hearing about some of the priorities that he has, and I think we share a lot of those priorities, so happy to talk about that. Of course, the budget will be one of the big things that will be talked about as that process gets going, and glad to have Chairman Deaton here to talk about it. But yeah, I think maybe next week we'll have some bills on the floor and get that process going, and happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
So St. Louis, the takeover bill passed out of committee yesterday.
Yes.
Is that going to be one of the first bills on the floor next week?
It could be. I think there might be some plans to maybe add some other provisions, or I think there's still negotiations on that, but I think that will be one of the first bills that we do in the beginning part of session. I don't know that it will be next week.
What policies that Kehoe highlighted that really stood out to you as something that you want the legislature to accomplish?
Well, I think, of course, the public safety is a huge thing for us and for the governor. With all the things that Missouri has going on, that he's focusing on, that I think is great. That's echoed by the members of the House here. We want to make sure that public safety is something that we focus on, and we will, just like with the St. Louis bill with a number of the other provisions there. And then I really did like hearing him talk about the World Cup, and again, that's a big thing that's going to happen next year. And then he did mention the sports teams. That's something that I would like to see happen, but again, I think that'll happen at the city and county level.
Where is your caucus on the $50 million for the ESA program?
The Republican conference is very much in favor of supporting the ESA program. Right now there's a waiting list for kids to get on that program, so this injection of funds will help other kids get on that program.
So is everyone for the $50 million?
There's not anything in the Republican conference where everyone's on board. I would say the vast majority of our members support funding that program and getting as many kids that want to be on that program on it and get them off the waiting list.
Do you think it's likely that there'll be a $50 million appropriation, or will it be less than that? I don't know if Representative Deaton wants to speak to that.
Well, I'm very much in favor of keeping it at 50, and I think Representative Deaton as well. I'll let him speak to that, but I don't have any plans to make that any lower. I'd like to see that higher, actually.
What about when it comes to not fully funding the formula? Is that something that you want to look at? I mean, $300 million short is a lot. Can schools still function off that?
Yes, you have to remember it's a record amount of funding that we're getting the K through 12 education. I think that's important to note. It's also important to note that we are fully funding the transportation line with $376 million. It's a record amount of money that K through 12 schools will receive. And I think it's important that the governor really tackled this problem head on, didn't shy away from it. He's talking about something that we have talked about addressing for quite a while now, which is modernizing how we fund K through 12 education, and I think he took it head on, addressed the problem, and we really do need to address it. It's 20 years old. Funding schools in the future, we do need to modernize that, and I think we're going to do that.
Do you believe the shortfall is a consequence of passing the big omnibus education bill last year? And is that something that you might look at as far as if it's going to be a position where you're not going to be able to meet that funding?
Well, I think even the department, I don't think, knows for sure whether it's because of the legislation we passed last year and whether it's due to the MSIP. I think they weren't even able to tell us. I think the way I look at it is I think we're meeting our obligations with Senate Bill 727. Some of the new obligations that we have, again, need to be addressed by addressing the foundation formula and modernizing school funding.
What about Amendment 3? He did not say anything about replacing the language. Instead, he said $4 million for pregnancy care centers.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're going to continue that working group, even though the governor did not say anything about replacing or repealing that language?
Yeah, no, I'm very glad he made that appropriation. The working group is over. The legislation, House Joint Resolution 54, has been referred to committee. Anything that we do really will be done in public. That's a bill that is carried by Representative Stinnett. It's been referred to Children and Families. I expect any discussion we have on Amendment 3 will happen in public. Yeah.
On a similar topic, there's been several bills that were in committee this week that would exempt smaller businesses from Prop A or slow down the raising of the minimum wage. What do you think of those? Do you expect those on the floor soon?
I'm not sure on the floor soon. I think Representative Vernetti has a bill that would extend the exemption to small businesses. I think that's a reasonable thing to look at. I think I'm very much in favor of making sure that the voters are heard. I think in Missouri we're going to have a minimum wage of $15. We're going to have the paid sick leave. It's just when you're a really small business or whether you're a seasonal business, it's very tough, and so we need to look at making sure that we're not hurting small businesses in Lee Summit, Missouri. So I think that's something to look at.
Why would anyone want to work for a small business if they're paying less than the minimum wage?
Well, I don't think they would, because the free markets will dictate that, if you go work at McDonald's right now, I think you're going to get $15. So I don't have any problem with people making high salaries. It's just imposing that burden on them or that mandate. We want to make sure that we're not hurting small businesses by doing that.
Is it the paid sick leave part that you think is more of a burden for a small business?
As a small business owner, I do think that's kind of burdensome because, and you see this in hospitals, seasonal workers, it's just very tough to get those and make sure you're meeting those provisions. It's more work for the companies. So if you're a small business, that can be very burdensome, and so we want to make sure that we don't hurt small businesses in Missouri.
So the floor leader announced House Resolution 141 for the floor next week. I think that's the Ethics Committee rule.
Yes.
Stuff about sexual
Yes.
harassment and other stuff. Are you making some substantive change to those?
The substantive changes I've seen have to do with making sure that we put in there that if it's the speaker, it's the pro tem will address it. It just cleans up the language that we have experienced in past sessions where there's some confusion about who handles these things. We want to make sure that the ethics reforms that Speaker Richardson put in place are there, and they address the problems. And so the changes that are in there kind of have to deal with that in terms of substantive changes.
Do they relate to your predecessor?
Not anybody specific. It's just making sure that if the speaker is involved with an investigation, that there are processes in place to make sure that the speaker receives due process, but that the process is fair and adjudicated in a fair manner.
Have you named anyone to the task force for the foundation formula?
I have not, but I have some great people in mind. I want to make sure when we do that we, one, have someone that will kind of be here. So I don't think it'll be a senior member, and two, that has experience with education funding and maybe some background in accounting or finances.
It doesn't have to be bipartisan, is it?
It does, and it will be.
Okay. What sort of time? I mean, obviously that's not something you're expecting to finish this session.
Yeah.
Is this something you won't be speaker anymore by the time we are finalizing the finishing touches of the formula, or is that what you're anticipating? Or?
Oh, no. When they do it, I'll be long gone back in Lee Summit. I believe they have to have their recommendations by December of 2026. So.
Representative Deaton, I have a question regarding your budget and the income tax. We know that the goal is to get it to zero. Is that a possibility this year, or where does that leave the state?
Well, I mean, the tax rate, I think, is top rate 4.7% as of January 1 with the latest Senate Bill 3 trigger. And so that's for this calendar year. And so anything we would pass obviously wouldn't go into effect till August 28th and likely be effective January 1 of next calendar year. I don't anticipate, having said that January 1 next year we'd have a 0% income tax rate. I think Governor's been very clear, rightfully so, that it's something we need to do. I would agree with that. I would share that sentiment. But we got to do it in the right way. And, we need to have a plan by which to do that. I think the executive branch, Governor Keogh and his team are still working on that. There's plans being worked on here in the House and the Senate. And so that would have to happen and will happen over a period of time to make sure that we're continuing to meet and fund the obligations of state government. And so it's going to be a process. Whether or not that legislation is enacted this year or in the following year, I don't know. But it will be something that is phased in over time, not in a dissimilar way to what we've seen with our triggers, We've just not yet ever triggered down to zero and never really replaced revenue. We've just limited the size and the growth of government. And even as we've cut income taxes in this state, going back to, a decade plus now, from over 6% to getting ever closer to what the triggers take us to now, 4.5%. We have more general revenue collections than ever before, and so we've continued to experience growth, which is a good thing and as intended.
Back to for Speaker Patterson. The question on illegal immigration was a topic for Kehoe's speech. He didn't have specific legislation in mind, but in the past week in the Senate on Monday, there were 2 bills that were heard on people who without legal status in the United States, including one that includes imprisonment and $1,000 bounty for people who appeared odds of similar legislation heard like that in the House, or chances of it going through the House?
Well, House Republicans are committed to making sure that we have legal immigration, but that we don't tolerate illegal immigration. I have not heard any enthusiasm from our members about doing any sort of bounty on that. I don't think that's something that you're going to see on this side. I think just even since Governor Kehoe gave his speech, President Trump signed the Lake and Riley Act, which I think addresses a lot of these problems. So in that legislation, the states have to work with the federal government on immigration. So I think a lot of it's being addressed at the federal level, but I haven't seen any enthusiasm for bounty hunters over here.
All right, maybe one more question, and I think we're wrapping up.
I apologize, I was late. Can you talk about what's going to happen next week on the floor?
We did. There might be bills on the floor. It might be the week after. Some of the bills have made it out of committee. Of course, they have to go through the rules process. And so, we could have floor action next week or the week after.
You said in your speech that you wanted bills regarding foster care to be the first things that are passed. Is that on track to be the first?
Yes, I spoke with Floor Leader Alex Riley yesterday, and I think that'll be the first bill that we do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, guys. See ya.